Hey guys, new disclaimer. I am not sure what's true or false in this video. I take gossip and tea from online, from magazines, from books, from word of mouth, from all over, and I ball it up together and I tell you guys a story. Now, let's get to the video.
What's up, everybody? This is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another Old Hollywood Scandals video. And before we get started, you know I gotta do my member shout-outs. First, we have CeeLo. Next, we have Lady Key, the Homegirl Healer, Teresa Lewis, Melanie Brayboy, Brazil Marie, Beyond 27, Ebony Carter, and Camilla. Thank you guys so much for becoming members of Ashley Says So. And if you are a member and I have not shouted out your name just yet, please do not worry, do not fret. I will be doing more member shout outs the further I go along. I also would like to give a special shout out to Miss Trishina C. Thank you so much, girl. And another special shout out to another YouTuber, and this is Mary Kay Bella. Y'all, please go check out her channel. This girl is great at what she does. She is so funny, and honey, she can lay a doggone wig, baby. She got a different daggone hairstyle every doggone day. Need to come do my head. But anyways, come on, let's get to the video. Today we are going to be talking about the hardest working man in show business, honey, Mr. James Brown. Let's get to it. Joseph James Brown was born on May 3rd, 1933 in Barnwell, South Carolina. His mother was a 16-year-old named Susie, and his father was a 21-year-old named Joseph Gardner Brown. Now, Susie and Joseph did not have any money to get to a hospital to have their baby, so they actually had James in a little bitty tiny little shack. But after their son was born and he was healthy and they were happy, they excitedly filled out the paperwork for his birth certificate. And when they received the actual paper copy back of the birth certificate, Susie was looking over the details of the birth certificate like any first-time mom would. And she's like, what the heck is this? Because she notices that her son's name on the birth certificate is James Joseph Brown. That is not what she named her son, of course. She named him Joseph James Brown. So Susie just looks down at her baby boy and she tells him, well, baby, your name from now on is James Joseph Brown. Now, soon after James was born, he and his parents took up residence in a slightly bigger shack in the town of Elko, South Carolina. And even though the little family was as poor as can be, at first, James didn't really notice that because when he went outside, all of the houses looked just like his. But when the family packed up and moved to Augusta, Georgia, when James was about 5 years old, that's when he first noticed that his family was a little bit poorer than everybody else. The first reason was because he and his parents weren't even living in their own home. They had taken up residence with one of James's aunts. The second reason is that the house they were now living in, it wasn't the Taj Mahal, but doggone it, it was better than the shack he was born in. Much better. In fact, it was probably one of the better looking houses on the street. And that was because everybody who was living in this house was bringing in some show enough money, honey. And that was because James's aunt was a madam and James and his family were living in a brothel. So naturally, while living in this house, little James did a lot of exploring, peeking through doors that wouldn't quite shut right, or even if the door could shut right, there was always a keyhole here and there. So this little boy really saw a lot of things that weren't quite for young eyes. Now, there is some gossip, and a lot of people think that James's mother was partaking in some of these prostituting activities while she was living with the aunt, but she was living there with her husband and her child. So when did she actually have time to take in customers? So, you know, child, people be lying. But I do know, or I heard, that this is when James started having an inkling of wanting a better life. You know what I'm saying? This house was nice, but he wanted his mom and daddy to have a nice house. But he didn't have too much time to admire the house because after a while, James's mother and father were tired of living in a fast-paced house or, you know, a brothel. So they left, but when they did not move into their own home. They moved in with another aunt. The Brown family tried its hardest to get up on its feet, but it never worked out for them because there was never any money. And rumor says there was never any money because James's father, Joseph, wouldn't keep a job, or any money that he brought into the home, he drank it away. And so soon the Brown family story became very familiar to a lot of poor families around that time. The husband would drink all the money away. The wife would become unhappy that she married so poorly. Whether the wife voiced these opinions or not, the husband can usually sense when his wife is unhappy with him or unsatisfied with him. And of course, when he sensed this, he would get angry, but not angry at himself though. He would get angry at the wife. And And instead of working on himself and stopping the drinking and going out to find a job, he would take the easier and the harsher route and start beating his wife. Beating her because he cannot make her happy. So this is what happened to James Brown's parents. So soon, just to get away, James would start leaving the house and start staying gone all day. And at first, he was just going out to get away from the house and going out maybe to play with some friends around the way. But soon, he found out he had some talent. And then he found out that people would pay good money to watch that talent. Now he was staying out because he was dancing and singing on the street corner, and a lot of people would give him money, especially military men. But no sooner than James had started to make his little bit of money that his mother finally called it quit. She said that she could not take it anymore, and she ended up leaving and going to New York. And this would have been all well and good, but she left her son, James Brown, behind. Now, it's said that her leaving caused a deep trauma within James, and he had a longing for his mother. And also, that was something that bothered him for pretty much the rest of his life, his mother leaving him like that. But her leaving also caused something else. It caused for that little inkling for success that James had to turn into a full-blown burning sensation, honey. He wanted success and money more than anything now because he saw what poverty did. He saw that it destroyed his family. He saw that it caused his father to pretty much go mad. It caused his mother to leave. And James vowed that he didn't want to live like that. And this burning sensation, this longing for success is what would turn him one day into the hardest working man in show business. But for right now, it turned him into the hardest working boy on the street corner. And honey, let me tell you, that is what he was, baby. Y'all should have seen him out there on that street corner. He had his little extensive footwork, you know what I'm saying? He learned how to play the piano. He learned how to play the harmonica. And baby, if you thought that was something, honey, when the song Caledonia came out, ooh, child, the way James was yelping and hollering everywhere and singing, honey, he was really a sight to see. People took notice of this kid. People took notice of how hard he was working, how hard he was dancing, how hard he was learning all of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? People were like, who is this kid? And so people soon enough started telling him, hey, you need to go perform in talent shows. You know, we think that you're good enough to perform in talent shows. And James actually did perform in a talent contest, and he won. But let's remember, James was doing all of this stuff for money, and he wanted to do his music and sing for money, and this was taking a while. He was still a kid. He didn't really have any connections like that, so other things started clouding his mind, and he started thinking, what else can I do to make money? What else brings big money? And then Joe Louis came to mind, just like Joe Louis came to mind for a lot of young black boys at that time. And so James was like, you know what, that's it, I'm about to be a boxer. And so he started boxing. But again, this was a money grab. So after a few bouts of that and no real money coming in, James started thinking even more, what can I do to make some serious money? And then Jackie Robinson came along. So then, honey, James signed on to play baseball. So now he's singing, he's boxing, and he's playing baseball. Like, he is just a man of many talents. And then the universe, God, or somebody, child, was like, boy, you're doing too doggone much. I mean, you sitting up here trying to do 3 things and you're trying to do it for money. What is you doing, sir? So then he did some kind of playing baseball, honey. Next thing you know, his knee was twisted to the back, child. He injured his leg. And when this happened, that took him out of sports completely. So he had no choice but to focus on his music. And James started honing his skills, and he was getting better and better, but the same problem from before kept resurfacing. He was not making money fast enough, and James wanted some doggone money. So James started robbing people. And I'm sure he started off small and maybe got bigger and bigger. I don't know exactly how that went down, but I do know that at the age of 15 or 16, his behind was caught and they placed him in a detention center. But James was a rough and tumble type of teenager. He had grew up in the streets. He was part of the streets. And I don't know if he actually went into the prison like, you know, what you looking at? You know, I don't know if he went in like that, but he did make it clear that nobody could mess with him. So I do believe that he did get into some fights in the prison, but he wasn't ridiculous in there. He didn't do anything that would give him more time or anything like that. While James was roughing around and fighting during the day, at nighttime when he was in his cell, all the other inmates heard was you know, I don't know if he was making that sound, but they did say that James was always singing, you know what I'm saying, always humming, so much so that the other inmates started calling him Music Box. Now, because James was always running around humming and singing and everywhere he went, he ended up running into another guy that was always humming and singing and This guy's name was Bobby Bird. Now, Bobby Bird and James Brown would become lifelong friends, and Bobby also was with James almost all the way through his career. In fact, per Bobby Bird, it was his family that secured an early release for James Brown from this detention center. Speaking of an early release, when it was time for James to go in front of the judge and the judge asked him, why should I give you this early release? James gonna sit up there and say, oh yes, if you let me go, I'm gonna just sing for the Lord, dedicate my life to Jesus. And the judge is like, okay, cool. So first, James gets work released, and then soon he is paroled. Even though I made fun of James saying he was gonna sing for the Lord, that is actually exactly what he did as soon as he left jail. And the group that he sang with was called Ever Ready Gospel. And rumor has it that Bobby Bird's sister Sarah sang in this group as well. And honey, she may have been the reason that James even joined the group, girl, because you know that rumors say that they got it on. And as for Sarah, if the rumor is true and they got it on, and if James did join the group for her, she must have felt like she had it all together. She got her man is in church, heck, her man even sings with her, she can keep an eye on him, you know, everything is good. But baby, her eyes may as well have been like Ray Charles, child, because James was cheating on that girl left, right, and front. Heck, he even married a woman. This woman's name was Velma. This happened in 1953, and she and James had one son, and that son's name was Teddy. So anyway, back to the story. If James was cheating on Sarah, he has now married a whole nother woman. There is no way that he can stay in this Ever Ready Gospel group unless he wants to get bust upside the head and cussed out every single day. Because you know Sarah was probably on that stuff, honey. But that didn't happen. James ended up leaving Ever Ready Gospel, and he ended up getting with another group. This gospel group was Bobby Bird's group, and their names were the Gospel Starlighters. And the Gospel Starlighters did well, but soon James was in Bobby's ear and was like, you know, man, this gospel stuff is all good. I'm glad y'all got me out of jail, but man, Bobby, come on, man, there's some real money out there in the world. You know what I'm saying? We ought to do secular music. And Bobby at first is like, you know, man, this a gospel group. But James stayed in his ear talking about how the money was good and all the fame they can get, everything that came along with being a secular music star. And then child Bobby started backsliding like he was on ice skates, honey. He agreed with James. He wanted his group to be secular. So the Gospel Starlighters changed their names to the Avons. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but child, they said the Avons used to light it up, honey. Baby said folks couldn't wait to get to the clubs and juke joints. Say that they can make the folks cut up, you know what I'm saying, with boogie with their fast songs, and then they could lay a slow song on you that, honey, would put you to bed. And because of this, soon the name the Avons did not fit this group. You see, they needed a name that matched their high energy. You know what I'm saying? A name that would set people's tongues on fire just to say it. And then they came up with it, the Flames. And the Flames were burning up people's tongues for real, honey, because word was traveling like dynamite that people needed to come see this group, the Flames. They are electrifying. And then something major happened for the group. They were performing in Macon, Georgia. While they were there, they contacted the architect of rock and roll, honey. Little Richard was in town. So James and the Flames make contact with Little Richard, and at first she's a little bit elusive, but then he starts hearing that the Flames are pretty good. Maybe they're worth your time. So he listens to James and the Flames, and he's like, oh my God, I love y'all's high energy style. You guys are amazing. I'm gonna put you in contact with my manager. And Little Richard's manager was also impressed, and soon he told the Flames to come on down to this radio station and do a demo. And they cut the demo of a song called Please, Please, Please. It was a major hit, honey. In fact, it sold 1 million copies. It was the Flames' first 1 million seller. So now the Flames are bona fide recording artists, honey, and James, their lead singer, is hot, hot, hot. And y'all know the women think so too. So soon James is just wrecking up them skirts, baby. Almost every time he performs, he's able to have his pick of the women. But baby, listen to this. Gossip says that James wasn't the only one out there doing that. Chai said that Bobby Bird and the rest of them was sitting up there sleeping with all the doggone women too, after James had his pick first, of course. And also, once Please, Please, Please took off, management started to get a little greedy, started seeing a little bit of dollar sign. And it was this greed, and also, I mean, honestly, it was just the truth of the matter as well. You know what I'm saying? It was just a fact that, you know, the Flames were good, but baby, that doggone James Brown, he was the doggone star, baby. So sooner or later, they came up with the decision to change it to James Brown and the Flames. And then when it happened, James Littell gonna readily agree to the situation, but then gonna get around all the rest of the Flames like, man, this messed up, man, ain't it messed up? I mean, they really trying to put my name up front. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we've been the Flames. We've been together forever. But child, them Flames wasn't buying that mess. They knew that James was behind the decision too. So soon they was like, we didn't sign up to just be background to James Brown. We signed up to be the Flames, all of us. So we quit. And they did. They actually just left. So now almost all of the old Flames are gone, but it does not matter much at all. All they do is hire new people. I believe this is when it changed to James Brown and the famous Flames. So now that James has his group, he continues to get bigger and bigger. And when he recorded the song Night Train, and it became a hit just because of the music itself, because it didn't have any song lyrics on that song. It was just the instrumental. That's when people knew that James Brown was definitely here to stay. And because he was here to stay and becoming super popular, more and more people wanted to work with him, especially women. And in one case, it wasn't necessarily the woman that wanted to work with James Brown, but it was the woman's mother who was pushing her to work with James Brown. And that woman's mother's name was Jenny Montgomery. And Jenny Montgomery's daughter was Thomasina Montgomery, aka Tommy Montgomery, aka Tammy Terrell. And yes, many people do not know this, but gossip says that when it comes to Tammy Terrell, her mother was a big push in her getting with James Brown. In fact, it was Mrs. Montgomery that caught wind that James Brown was performing in Atlantic City and drove down to Atlantic City by herself to persuade James Brown to hear her daughter. And I am sure that many people had been requesting to sing with James Brown, but see, this situation was pretty different because see, Jenny Montgomery was a beautiful lady. So I'm pretty sure that when she was talking to James, James was like, okay, if the mama is this fine, I really need to see the daughter. So yes, ma'am, I'll hear your daughter sing. And so James did go see Tammy perform in a show. And when he saw her, he was absolutely overwhelmingly wowed by this beautiful caramel skinned girl. Firstly, it was because of her voice. She had an amazing, beautiful voice. And secondly, it was her beauty. Tammy comes and introduces herself, you know, hi, I'm Thomasina. And she has these big brown eyes, you know, eyes that go up and down a man like a searchlight. James said immediately, hey, I would like for you to sing with me. And Tammy was like, yes, I would like to. And so Tammy is excited. She is now the new opener for James Brown and the famous Flames. But no sooner than the girl started performing, you know James Brown is in her ear, telling her how beautiful she is, telling her how, you know, she got star power, telling her that if she stuck with him, he would indeed make her a star. And around this time, Tammy was 16 going on 17, or possibly even 17 years old at this time. So, you know, she's young. She is eating these words right up. So when these words got a little bit more flirty and a little bit more sexual, rumor has it is that it did not bother Tammy in the least. In fact, just to expand on the beginning of their relationship a little bit, I'm going to tell you guys some information that was not told to me for this video. Neither was it told to me for the Tammy Terrell video. In fact, for the Tammy Terrell video, that was my first video in front of the camera. I didn't even have any sources at that time, okay? So this is just information that has been told to me since by Motown associates, people in passing, you know, all that good stuff. But I do want to make it clear that it is said that at this time, Tammy had a really immature mind where she felt like this was her doing. She was calling her family and friends and, you know, doing little stuff like, you know, girl, you know I'm talking to James Brown. Oh, baby, girl, you already knew when he was going to see me, it was going to be over with. You know what I'm saying? And it was just really just immature girl stuff, you know, but she really thought that she had put something on him. You know what I mean? Y'all know how it is. These young girls feel like, you know, ooh, you know, he older, but baby, he know what to do when he got some of this, that kind of stuff. That is the way it is said that Tammy was acting. And for some reason, a lot of people don't like to hear this stuff about Tammy Terrell. I really don't understand why. You know what I'm saying? People like to pretend that she was a perfect angel, but she was not. And that is okay. That is okay. I get so sick of people getting mad about women that want to go sleep around or women that want to do whatever. That's okay. Oh, well, folks do what they do. People are grown. But there is nothing wrong with that. Ain't nobody got no room to judge. So anyways, I'm sorry I started fussing at y'all, but that be getting on my nerves a little bit. So, her and James are now actually in a relationship. And soon that relationship, of course, turns into an intimate sexual relationship. Now, even though Tammy is with her man and she feels grown up and she's okay with what is going on, it is said that her mother was not happy in the least about Tammy and James. But at first, her mother didn't really know what was going on. You know, she had a sense of what might have been going on, but she didn't know for sure. That is until one day Tammy calls home and she tells her mother and her sister, hey y'all, we're in New York. I want y'all to come up. James got me set up in this nice behind hotel. And it is said that their hotel room was bad, child. And they also said that James had showered Tammy with all kind of furs. You know what I'm saying? She was wearing the latest outfit, you know, beautiful shoes, had jewels just dripping diamonds. James was taking care of her. And so Tammy is kind of flaunting this. She's kind of feeling like she is the first lady. She is James's first lady. And she actually calls her mother and her sister up there to go on a shopping trip. You know, I think they went to Saks Fifth Avenue, went to a couple of more places. When they get back from this shopping trip and they go back to Tammy's hotel room, her actual bedroom door in the hotel room is open. And so Tammy's mother walks in first and she is mortified to see James Brown sleeping in her daughter's bed. And I am not sure whether she screeches or what happens, but I do know that it is said that James kind of jumps up and, you know, hurries up and puts on his clothes, and he's very polite about the situation, and he's like, you know, hi, how y'all doing? I'm sorry, ma'am. And he walks on out, and that is the end of that. After he leaves, the story goes two different ways. One version says that Tammy's mother just acted a plain doggone fool. Then she started tearing up stuff, cussing, you know, what this grown man doing with my daughter? I know he better not be sleeping with my child, all this good stuff. And the second version says that it wasn't nothing like that, like not for real. It is said that her mother was just kind of like, you know, I don't like this, you know, I don't like this situation, I don't like it. And it said that one of James's assistants came to her and was like, don't worry about it, Miss Montgomery. Nothing is going on. And I'm watching out for Tammy. Nothing is going to happen. You don't have to worry about her and James messing around with each other. I got the situation under control. And it is said that when Jenny Montgomery heard this from the assistant, that, you know, she just kind of believed the assistant and left Tammy there and went on back home. And earlier in this story, I said somebody had eyes like Ray Charles. Well, this woman right here, this assistant, if she's supposed to be watching, she got doggone eyes like Stevie Wonder, child. Can't neither one of them see, because Tammy and James kept on getting it on, kept on living how they was living. So either this assistant just straight up lied to Mrs. Montgomery, or she was blind. And Tammy, for her part, fell deeply, deeply in love with James Brown. And I don't know if James loved her or not. I'm not sure. Maybe he did. But I do know that their relationship was getting worse and worse and worse. For one, James had started hitting on Tammy. Then one night, she got the worst beating of all. James is on stage and he is giving the performance of a lifetime. You know, he's doing all of the, he's dropping to his knee. Everybody's loving it. The crowd is going wild. And James was very pleased with himself. But then he looked to the side of the stage, and honey, his mood changed from cloud nine to as dark as a coal mine, because he looked to the side of that stage and his girlfriend Tammy was not there. She was just there at the beginning of the show, but she's not there now. Where is she? How could she let him perform without her standing on the side of that stage and watching every move she made? I mean, the obvious disrespect is just immense. You know, what kind of woman is that? This is the way James was acting. Everything that I just did, this is apparently what was going on through James's head when he did not see Tammy on the side of that stage. He just could not understand how any woman, especially a woman that was so-called his woman, could miss even 1 second of one of his spectacular performances. So he was full of wonder of how did this happen, and then very soon that wonder turned into anger. And as soon as James finished his set, baby, he was off stomping to the back of the stage. Anybody that came near him, Mr. Brown, can I get you? Boom, pushed out the way. Hey, Mr. Brown, can I have a hot? Boom, pushed out the way. He didn't have time. He's looking for Tammy. And I imagine Tammy looked up with those big brown eyes, and they were full of terror, honey, as she watched James looking like a demon come and snatch her up by her arm and drag her into another room and shut the door. From the moment the door shut, gossip says James went to beating, baby. He went to beating and popping and slapping Tammy all upside her head. He was busting her all in the face, like he was really, really abusing her. Tammy could not get a lick in, really couldn't even get a word in. You know what I mean? She was screeching here and there, but mostly it was just the sound of James just hitting. And then he started cursing and fussing. Everybody that was listening in is terrified. They don't understand, like, what the heck is going on? when he is done, the people that saw Tammy, and one guy in particular, his name is Bobby Bennett, he played in the band with James Brown. He said that when he saw Tammy, she was bloodied everywhere. Face just all busted up. It was ridiculous what James Brown did to her. I mean, he actually beat Tammy so hard, he ended up beating some sense into the girl, child. After this beating, Tammy did not even stick around. She called her mama got on that doggone road and she came and got her child. And when she ran, she never looked back. And after she left, I'm not sure if James missed Tammy or loved Tammy or what. I'm not sure. But if he did, nobody could tell because he did not miss a beat. He kept right on working and touring just like he had always done. And actually, at this point in his life, James was a very violent person. And not only really at this point, at a lot of points in his life, he was a very violent person. But he was really, really off the rails at this time because the whole situation with Tammy Terrell happened in 1962. Well, in 1963, that is when he had his famous shootout with Joe Tex. If you want to know more about that, please go watch my Joe Tex video. But I'm just saying that James was obviously like a fireball around this time. Like anybody could get it. And then along with all of this foolishness, he is still recording music and still becoming more and more successful. In fact, by the year 1964, James felt like he was much more than his record label. He felt like he was bigger than King Records. He wanted to shop around for a bigger record label who could give him a bigger platform. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who could actually turn him into a superstar. But child, James must have fell and bumped his head if he thought King Records was just gonna let him go just like that. As soon as they heard that James was shopping around, honey, them folks was like, I know you lying. And they sat up there and they filled out papers and they filed an injunction. So James was prohibited from releasing music with any other label. So James got the picture. He understood that King Records was going to make it very, very hard for him to go anywhere else or do anything else. But he also understood that he was worth more than what King Records was paying him. And he also understood that if he wanted to get King Records to pay him what he was worth, he was going to have to show them. He was going to have to take the reins himself and launch himself into superstardom. And that is exactly what he did. Honey, now listen at this. The year was still 1964 and James Brown was invited to sing in the TAMI show. And on this night, this period, this show, the cosmos lined up for James Brown. It was like he was so into his performance that he created his own magnetic force field. Like seriously, like he created his own energy, his own vibration, and it was such a magnetic pull that him and the audience were on the same wavelength. He brought the audience up to his level of emotion, his level of passion. The audience had that same level. This is not easily done. The point that James Brown got to that night with that audience, some people never make it there. As a matter of fact, James Brown wasn't even the headliner at that show. The Rolling Stones were the headliners, but James had done such a magnificent job that after James left the stage, the audience ain't had nothing to give the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger with all his moves and stuff could not match James Brown. He might as well not even think of that. So I just can't explain it enough. You know what I'm saying? Y'all should have been there. That's all I can say. Y'all should have been there, but since y'all could not have been there, if I can find the video, I'm gonna leave a link in the description. Please go check out that link and just see how powerful James's performance was. It was this moment that set off a great chain of events for James Brown. And that is because he got national attention and exposure. All of a sudden, people all over America was looking at their TV screens and they were seeing something that was electrifying and something that they rarely ever saw before. The only person who could even get close to this energy was Mr. Excitement himself, Jackie Wilson. So the TAMI show was the biggest and best thing that had ever happened to James Brown. Now with this performance and with this national exposure and attention, James had set out to do what he wanted to do. When King saw this, they knew that they was gonna have to dig deep in their pocket. So they did renegotiate a contract with him. And soon after that, he records Papa Got a Brand New Bag, and the rest is pretty much history. So it is now the late 1960s, and James Brown has been on top with his string of hits. I mean, after Papa Got a Brand New Bag, he came out with I Feel Good, and he really outdone himself when he he came out with Man's World. Then we get to the year of 1968 and Martin Luther King is assassinated. Boston, Massachusetts is up in arms. All of the black people there want to riot. As a matter of fact, black people all over America want to riot. Everybody is ready to fight. Y'all done killed our leader again. Can't have nothing, doggone it. That's the way people are feeling. So in the midst of all of this happening, James Brown has a concert in Boston. And at that concert, everybody is all riled up. They're kind of like pushing and shoving and rushing the stage. And James Brown basically, you know, tells them to calm down. He tells them that, you know, we black people, we strong, but we don't act like this. You know, y'all acting crazy. He kind of pacifies them, okay? And I hate to say that, but that is what rumor says, and that's kind of what it is. He kind of pacifies them, and he makes them calm down, you know, and see things from a different perspective. And this is good, okay? This is good, but then on the other side of the coin, gossip says you had some people that looked at him like he was a... Can I say coon? Now, I'm not sure how James felt about it, you know, and I'm not sure which of those is fact. I'm not sure if he just calmed the people down on his own accord or if he was brought in to calm the people down and he actually was, you know, like an agent. I don't know. But I do know that if he was doing this to kind of be like a traitor, he must have felt some kind of guilt behind it because this happened in April and honey, by August, he recorded the blackest song ever. Say it loud, honey. I'm black and I'm proud. Ooh, but listen at this, y'all. Listen at this. Why come it is folks out here talking about some dim little kids that was hollering, I'm black and I'm proud and doing all that. Baby, they said they wasn't black or proud, child. These folks is out here talking about them was Asian kids, girl. Baby, they said them kids out there just yelling out the blackness, this and that. Child, all of them sitting up there looking like the little girl from Rush Hour, baby. Y'all know that little girl that was sitting up there, you know, singing Mariah Carey all hard. Baby, they said that's how them little kids looked in that doggone studio. Now, by the 1970s, James Brown had acquired a new name, and this name was called the Godfather of Soul. But it didn't matter. I don't care if he was the actual Godfather. It still did not stop his career from slowing down because disco had come through. And when disco came through, it made soul with all those loud horns and all those drum beats, made it seem real old-fashioned. So all of a sudden, James Brown was very yesterday-ish, okay? Now, he did have some other hits along with the big payback in the 70s, but nothing was as big as his music was in the 60s. And so now it's time to back away from James's career and his music and all of that stuff for just a little bit so I can serve you guys the first batch of tea. Come on, let's get to the scandal. First off, let's talk about James's mother leaving him and abandoning him with his father. Now, it is true that James's mother did indeed leave him behind, but gossip says that it is a lie that she just kind of threw up her hands and was like, you know, that's it. I'm leaving my child behind. I'm leaving my husband. It is said that that is a lie. It is said that the reason that she ended up leaving James behind is because his father told her that, hey, if you leave and take my boy from me, I will kill you. And so that is why she left, and she left James behind. And then, not only that, get this, there is another rumor out there, and actually the movie about James Brown even said this, that he did see his mother like one more time, but she showed up at one of his shows, and she was kind of begging for money, and James gave her the money, and then he never really saw her again. Gossip says that this is also not true. Actually, when James married his second wife, a lady by the name of Deidre, but he called her Dee Dee, that Dee Dee tried to find his mother for him. So she actually did locate James's mother, and James and his mother reconnected. He continued to have a relationship with, as well as care for his mother, and possibly even take care of his mother up until her death in the year of 2004. Next thing is this. Did y'all know that it is said that James Brown would be performing a song, and if the audience did not react, or the audience was acting kind of dead, like they didn't enjoy it, that James would switch to another song like right in the middle of that song? But it was like the band was like, you know, kind of scared, you know what I'm saying? Because they don't know when you're going to switch to another song. Speaking of his musicians being scared, the next rumor says that James Brown was a complete jerk to his musicians. And it is said that he would make up any reason to basically rob these guys blind. He already were not paying them anything. He was ruthless. They said there was plenty of times when his musicians would come to him, you know, begging for more pay. Feeling like they did not even make enough to take care of their families, you know, just wanting a little bit more. And James was a tightwad. He would not give them anything. The sad thing about this is that people like to say all the time, you know, oh, James Brown's such a hard worker. You know, he about worked himself to death. He about worked himself to death. Well, who do you think was doing that work with him? Those musicians, he about worked them to death too. And the thing is with them is they were not getting paid anything compared to what he was getting paid. And then on top of that, James would find reasons to fine them. Like if they missed a beat or they missed a note, he would fine them, and he would fine them a lot of dang money. And then not only that, if the musicians wanted to complain or say something that they didn't like, don't you know that James would be like getting up in their face, like he would try to fight them. And it said that plenty of times he did fight them. And baby, don't you know they said James Brown could fight? Baby, they said not only was he getting in these musicians' faces, he was actually whooping some tails around here. And now let me tell y'all about this next rumor. Child, it said that it could be James Brown's closest friend. And basically he could come up to James and be like, James, come here. Ooh, I got some news for you, dude. You ain't gonna believe this right here. And so James will walk up to the friend and be like, hey, no, man, no. I got news for you. You ain't my friend no more. This is over with. I don't ever want to see you again. And you know why? It was because the friend called him James, child. James was making anybody and everybody call him Mr. Brown if you worked for him and you said James or even slipped to say you were out of a job. His name was Mr. Brown. And it is said that he had lost a lot of close friendships because either the person refused to call him Mr. Brown or they would simply forget. And sometimes they would mess up and say James. If you messed up and said James, you were supposedly out of his life forever. Oh, let me tell you about this. So I've already told you about James talking to folks any kind of way and his musicians and all of that. But they said even Bobby Bird, they said that that movie was correct about the way James Brown treated Bobby Bird. Said that he even talked to him any kind of way. You work for me, you a hanger on for James Brown, that type of thing. And that's not right. Bobby Bird was James Brown's friend for a long time. Now let's get to the next rumor. So it is said that James Brown, when he first started out, was against drugs. So he barely even did alcohol. He was supposedly so against drugs that if he caught somebody in his band doing drugs, you know, even just smoking marijuana or something like that, he would fire that person without a second thought. And then the story just gets a tad bit weird because it said that either in the late 60s or the early 70s, somebody out of somewhere gave James Brown some moonshine and some Delaware punch and mixed it together, and honey, he got a taste of it and he just lost his mind, child. I mean, just lost his mind. Every time you came over to his house, apparently he was serving you these drinks. He also started to drink a lot more. And then after he had started drinking, he upgraded to doing marijuana as well. And he did this for some years, and then he started doing cocaine. And then out of nowhere, the cocaine gets upgraded to PCP. Now, this is said to have happened over many years, like he progressively got worse, but it was just weird to me how he didn't do anything at first and he was so against it, and the man ended up on PCP. And then as soon as he puffed it, he was hallucinating, and whatever he was hallucinating, it would make the person beside him become the bad guy, and James would be ready to fight. Speaking of James fighting and his women, gossip also says that James Brown hit on every single woman that he was in a relationship with. Now, I've already told you about his first wife, Velma. They got married in 1953. They had the son, Teddy, and then they kind of separated maybe around 1956 or something like that, maybe 1959, but they didn't get fully divorced until 1969. And then that next year in 1970, that is when James married his second wife, Dee Dee Jenkins. And James and Dee Dee had 2 daughters. And honestly, I don't think that Dee Dee and James had a good relationship at all, even from the start. I honestly believe that she came into this relationship with James hitting on her immediately. Even after their daughters were born, he still did not stop putting the hands on Dee Dee every chance he got. And his daughter Yama, and I hope I'm saying that right, it might be Yama, I'm not sure, but his daughter Yama, she actually wrote a book detailing her father's abuse of her mother. And in the book, she basically said that James would just lose his cool just out of nowhere and beat her mother terribly. Said that anything that would happen during his day, if it was bad, he would take it out on his wife. Then she said one night she had went into their bedroom, and I don't know if her mama had just got out the shower or what. I have no idea, but I do know that it said that her mother had on a blue and white robe, okay? And so Yama walks into the bedroom and all she sees is her mama TT, because her mother is laid on the floor with her legs splayed wide open, and James is on top of her straddling her, and he's just punching her mother in the face. And she said the sounds that it made when his fist was like touching his wife's face, it was just like, you know, doosh, just basically like thud sounds. And then she said suddenly she saw blood just squirt from her mama's face, like her cheek or something busted open and blood just started squirting from her face. And another image that stuck with her was when her mother's legs just started kicking. And then she said she saw her mama trying to do her hands, you know, to block her face, and she tried to get up to save herself. But James was merciless. And so Yana said that she ended up hating her father. You know what I'm saying? She loved him, but she hated him at the same time because he used to beat on her mother. And she also said that she kind of resented her mama because she felt like if her mama couldn't protect herself, how could she protect them? But the thing is that her mama didn't have to protect them. Nobody did, because it is said that James Brown never laid a finger on his daughter. So James and Dee Dee's marriage was an abusive mess, and Dee Dee tried to hold on to her marriage. She loved her husband, and then they had these children, but then one day she just could not take it anymore. And so in 1981 their divorce was final. After Dee Dee, James married again. This time he married a lady by the name of Adrienne Lois Rodriguez, and this was in 1984. And unfortunately James did the same thing to her that he did to the other women in his life. And there is one tale that's around that says that he beat Adrienne with a metal pipe. And apparently while he was beating her, Adrienne was ducking and dodging, you know, trying to get out of there, and she actually did make an exit, and she got into her car and she drove away. Well, don't you know that when she got to the hospital and they were checking her out, and by the way, she was black and blue, the police came up there, they confirmed that she was black and blue, and some rumors say she had a broken nose, but I don't know about that. But anyways, once she gets to the hospital, she tells the police what happened. They go outside, they look at her car, baby, she got a bullet hole in her tire, honey. As she was driving away, James pulled out a gun and shot at that woman, tried to kill her. And so the police are like, hey, you need to file a report. We need to put charges on him. You're gonna have to do something. And Adrienne did. And James Brown was charged with attempted murder. You are probably wondering why you never heard of this, because before I started researching, I had never heard of this. That is because nothing happened with this case. Nothing at all. The police didn't go any further. There was no questions asked. I mean, everything just disappeared. And sometime after this, one of Adrienne's friends was like, you know, whatever happened to that whole thing with James? Baby, don't you know that Adrienne told her friend that she dropped the whole thing, made it disappear because James had some thugs to come up to her and tell her that if she did not drop it, that'll be her last day on earth? Hey, baby, listen, that's not the half of it. Child, there's so many stories out here that says that James Brown had gangsters on his team, true thugs on his team that will really get to you. So back to Adrienne, after the metal pipe episode, she and James ended up getting back together. But I do know that a short while after they split, Adrienne ended up dying on a plastic surgery table. And yes, before y'all even ask, there are rumors out here that say that James Brown may have had her murdered. But that all just sounded like a whole bunch of hearsay, like for real. There was nothing to me that would back up the claim that James would have this woman killed, okay? Now, let's talk about the relationship that he had with Lynn Collins. And she was a singer that sang with him. And she said that James was very controlling when it came to her. Baby, she said that he got her a phone in her house. And honey, if she did not answer that phone every time he rang, there would be hell to pay for her. So she had to literally sometimes sit by the phone all day just so she wouldn't miss a phone call from James Brown. And it's also around this time period that it said that James Brown had a pregnant girlfriend. I don't know this lady's name or who it was, but James was still beating on her while she was very pregnant. As a matter of fact, one of his bandmates said he recalled seeing James throw this pregnant lady down the stairs. Now let me throw in a little bit of strange tea, honey. This was news to me. Baby, did y'all know it was folks out here talking about some James Brown was bisexual? There is an interview that CHONG did, I think like from Cheech and Chong or whatever. Child, he did an interview with a person called like Wayward or something like that. In the interview, though, he said that James Brown had a long period of bisexuality. You know, I don't know if James wanted to try stuff out or what happened, but gossip says that he was bisexual at one point in his life. Oh, and I'll actually put that interview in the description. So, honey, even though I don't know nothing about James Brown and his men, I do know a lot of tales about his women. And let me get to another one. Woo! Child, listen at this. Okay, this comes from a gossip blog, but there was a young lady there, and she said that her aunt told her that she had a sexual relationship with James Brown in the 1970s. And her aunt said that he could really lay it down Charlie Brown, girl. said that James had some pipe action on him. James's thrusting power was on 1,000, child. Let me tell you how I know. Because the aunt said that he would be thrusting so hard that every time his wig, listen, y'all crazy, his wig would shift to the side, baby. Said James' wig was just doing this the whole time, okay? And she said one time it shifted to the side so far, she saw that he did have some really straight hair underneath, looked like he had a perm. But why come James ain't had no edges, girl? James know better than that. That's why he was sitting up there snatching all them women's edges, because he's sitting up there jealous because they got edges and he don't. Now let's move on. Now this next rumor is regarding Elvis, and it said that James Brown didn't really care for Elvis because he felt like Elvis was trying to do everything that he wanted to do. As a matter of fact, Elvis would actually call James Brown's associates and be like, you know, I want to see some of James Brown's tapes. You know what I'm saying? I want to kind of see what he wears. I want to see how he's dancing. And James said that Elvis one time had the nerve to ask James Brown, like, hey, I need to borrow your backing band for this gig or something like that. And James said, hey, that was a step too doggone far. Baby, this is James Brown's band. You'll never get my doggone band. Said he had to tell Elvis, you know, you need to back off a little bit. This is my stuff. You can't just steal like my whole soul band. What's wrong with you? And then listen at this. This goes all the way back to the TAMI show. That show where James had really took off. It's claimed that James Brown figured out at that show that he did not care for Mick Jagger. And it said the reason that he didn't is because James had planned on going last on that show. But Mick found out about it and he calls tail and he was like, no, you're not going last. I am the headliner. I should go last. And so it said that is why James went out there and really put on the best show of his life. Now, as I stated when I last talked about James' career, is that the 1970s, his career came to a standstill. So James was not making a lot of money like that. But just because his money slowed down does not mean that James's spending slowed down. And he was spending money on every single thing except what he was supposed to spend money on. Y'all know who it is, the dang on IRS. They said that between the years of 1969 and 1970, I think, that James owed about $4 million in back taxes. And then the bad news for James just kept on coming. In 1973, it is reported that his eldest son, Teddy, died in a car accident. But listen at this. Listen to some strange tea about this, because Teddy's half-brother, James's other son, and his name is Daryl, he actually wrote a book. And in this book, he says that he feels like his half-brother was executed and then placed inside of that car, and then the car was made to look like it was in a car accident. But to get on with the rest of the stories, the 1970s was a definite slum for James Brown. Outside of his touring, didn't have much else going on. And then the 1980s hit, and magically, James Brown had a resurgence for his career. And one reason is because he started appearing in a lot of movies, and The Blues Brothers was one of those movies. Another reason was due to rap. You know, people that started rapping and they were sampling James Brown, people wanted to sound like James Brown. He even made a song with Africa Bambaataa. And he also made that song Living in America. And then on top of everything else, Prince and Michael Jackson a lot of time would allude to James Brown. They would say, you know, I look up to James Brown. James Brown is this, James Brown is that. All of this is great for James Brown. People were happy for him. But let me tell y'all something, honey. James Brown could not wait to have the spotlight on him, because as soon as it was, James Brown started acting a doggone fool. And yes, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. That crazy, unexplainable interview that he did. Huh? I look good. I smell good. I make love good. Living in America. I'm sorry I had to act that out, but that's what James did on the interview. I'll leave the link in the description. So James's career had pretty much by this point become full circle, okay? He started out with nothing. He turned himself into something. He fell off for a little while and he clawed his way back on top. And now it's time to throw in our last batch of tea and get the rest of these scandalous details out in the open. So in the 1980s, James Brown was bugging, honey. Not only was he still heavy on drugs, he started doing crazy stuff. For instance, on September 24th, 1988, he showed up at an office that he owned, and next door to his office was an insurance company. Well, James comes into work and I'm guessing he has to take a wicked pee-pee, honey. So he goes into the bathroom. Baby, he done almost fell out in there, child. The bathroom is just stinking, baby. Somebody done took a doo-doo. And then the bad part about it, gossip say they left the turd in the toilet, child. The ultimate disrespect. And once again, this is how James took it. He was so mad about it and so dramatic about it that he left the bathroom and baby, he went and got his shotgun and walked directly next door into the insurance office. Honey, wouldn't you know it, the people in the insurance company, they were holding a seminar. So they're just all sitting there in their chairs. Everybody has their dainty little cup of coffee. And I imagine a guy named Bob was sitting up at the podium and he's just, Barbara, tell me why we would not sell Earl an insurance policy. And Barbara's all like, oh, Bob, it's because Earl lives in a trailer. Pow! Shotgun blast to the ceiling, honey. James Brown then walked in there and blew a hole in the roof. He is upset about somebody taking a dump in his toilet. And so the people in the insurance company don't care that he's James Brown. They care that he pulled a shotgun off on them. You know what I'm saying? So they call the police. So before you know it, the police is behind James Brown and he is leading them on a high-speed chase. And rumor has it, while they were chasing him, they shot at James Brown a whole lot of time. But luckily, none of those shots hit him. Eventually, James pulls over in a parking lot, and as soon as he does, the officers shoot out his front two tires. Then, while James is still sitting there, the officers start trying to surround the truck, and they're kicking at the door, and they're hitting it with the butt of the gun. It is said that this scared James Brown, so he started the truck up again, and James is just driving, baby. He don't care that the steel is all on the road. He don't care that he creating sparks. He does not care that there are 14 police cars behind him. He drove 6 miles until he made it to Augusta, Georgia, and then he pulled over. Baby, them police officers drug him all out that doggone truck. Child, James Brown was out there looking like a rag doll. And then guess what they done next, y'all? Started busting James Brown all upside the head. Child, James Brown's wife said James' head was going just like this. After this, James was found to have PCP in his system. Now, for that high-speed chase, James was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but he only served 2. And in 1998, a woman by the name of Mary Simon accused James Brown of holding her captive for 3 days, demanding oral sex from her, and shooting his gun around her. But these charges were dismissed, and then a civil suit was filed against James Brown because a lady by the name of Lisa Rushton, who was a background singer to James Brown, said that James had demanded sexual favors from her, and then when she refused, he cut her pay, and he also cut her stage presence in the background. But she eventually withdrew her lawsuit. And then another civil suit was filed against James Brown. And this was by a woman who I believe used to work in his home, and her name was Lisa Agbalaya. And she claimed that James gave her a very hard time when she was working. She said every time she walked by him, James would whisper out and tell her, I got bull testicles down here, girl. These are bull testicles. I don't know why he was telling her he had bull testicles, but she said this is what he was doing. After telling her he has bull testicles, he also gave her some zebra print underwear. Not only did he give her the underwear, he demanded that she put on the underwear right now and lay down and let him massage her body with all his oils. And then when Lisa was like, no, I don't want your hands touching me, but I like them panties though. I'm just kidding. She ain't saying nothing about the panties. When she turned him down, she said that James Brown fired her. In her suit, she was charging sexual harassment as well as wrongful termination. The court found him not guilty and he didn't have to face any charges about the sexual harassment, but they did find him liable for wrongful termination. And then on July 3rd of the year 2000, James Brown's lights went off at his house. All I know is that when the repairman showed up to fix his light, James Brown came running out the house like a crazy person with a steak knife in his hand, child. And so the repairman is like, trying to get away. And James just chasing him like a horror movie, like he Michael Myers or something. And James was dragged to court once again, but the state pardoned him. So no matter all of this mess that I have just told y'all about, James Brown seems like he never ever changed his behavior, his demeanor, or who he was. In fact, a man that worked with James Brown for many, many years said that even in the 90s and 2000s, he had women flown in for James. Sometimes he would fly in 2-3 women a day and drop them off at James Brown's house. But honey, listen at this. You know it's finna be some mess going on because this same man got a little bit messy too. He ain't have to add this part in. Come on, one time he dropped off a woman and he was by the door when she and James was getting it on. Baby, why come he said that woman was laughing in the bedroom? She was laughing and she started making fun of James' child. Said she told James like, you can't get it up? Why look like a pencil down there? I thought it was gonna be a little bigger than that. I'm finna go home. This ain't even worth it. I'm pretty sure that story is true because it was pretty much confirmed by his 4th wife, Tommy Ray Heine. And Tommy Ray said that over the years, as James got older, he became more and more mean. He became more and more disillusioned with life, and he became more and more depressed. And the reason was he was getting older. She said James Brown hated getting older. She said it's a lot of stuff that bothered him, but nothing more than the fact that he was not the man that he used to be. You know what I'm saying? He hated that he couldn't just jump up and do his dance and do a split. And he also hated that he could not pleasure a woman the way he wanted to. And this would make James very depressed. But through it all, he still continued touring. He still continued doing his shows. And Tommy Ray said he pretty much worked himself to death. She said when he came home, he would sit on the end of the bed and he would just say, I can't do this no more. I can't do this anymore. And she said that some days after he performed, he couldn't get out of bed for 24 hours. His legs would be swollen and the veins popping, and she would just have to massage his legs and, you know, just sit there with him because he was elderly. He was an old man. And then as it got closer and closer to December of 2006, which is the month that James died in, it said that James started talking more morbidly and just talking about death a lot more. But girl, listen to what they said. Why come they said that James Brown was going around telling anybody that would listen that after you die, your soul leaves your body through a poop, girl? Child, talking about something, when you laying there dead, your soul come out through your booty hole. Now, he know better than that. And, you know, maybe it's true. I don't know. But listen, James was telling folks that he didn't care what nobody said, no doctors, no preachers, no nothing. After a person dies, their body lay right there and release the soul from their butthole. On December the 23rd, James went in for a dental appointment. And when he got to the appointment, he realized that he was very, very ill. So instead of performing the dental implant surgery, the dentist told James that he needed to seek medical help and see a doctor right now. And so James did not go right then. He waited till the next day, and he did go to the hospital for a medical examination. They advised James to cancel all of his upcoming shows and all of his upcoming events. And even though James did cancel them, it is said that he was confident that he was going to be discharged very soon and he could pick back up on his events to make his money. But throughout that day, which was the 24th of December, James was getting worse and worse and worse. And then on Christmas Day 2006, James Brown died of congestive heart failure at the age of 73. James Brown went on to have a huge, elaborate funeral that was televised, and Michael Jackson even showed up to the funeral because James Brown was his idol. But see, what people don't know is that gossip says Michael Jackson came in the day before and sat with James Brown's body. And it said that when Michael saw the body, the first thing he said was, his hair is not right. His hair is not right. He was like, I want his hair fixed. This is not right. It's claimed that Al Sharpton was there and he was like, okay, Michael, you know, we'll get somebody to fix his hair. And Michael was like, yeah, because I don't like that. And so Al Sharpton was like, Michael, it would mean the world to everybody if you showed up at this funeral. And so Michael told him, I'll think about it. I don't know. So it said that when Michael Jackson showed up at that funeral, everybody truly was surprised. Nobody actually thought that he was going to show up. And then, honey, speaking of Al Sharpton, check this out, baby. Y'all, don't y'all know that some of James Brown's kids said that Al Sharpton was there for like 7 days straight after their father passed away, telling them that, you know, he'll pray for them and he's there and all this kind of stuff. Baby, don't you know that they said that as soon as he found out that he was not in James Brown's will, child, they said they never heard from Al Sharpton again. Baby said he might as well change his doggone number and flew away. Woo! Child, the whole thing just messy, messy, messy. And don't get me started with the mess that has been going on for many, many years. And I think it just now got resolved this year, if I'm not mistaken. But after James died, things got very, very messy with all kind of infighting within the family. And it was really, really sad because James Brown was not buried where he wanted to be buried. And he said he wanted to be buried by his wife and his mother. He is not buried with them. Right now, at this moment, it said that James Brown is buried in one of his daughter's backyard. And baby, they said if you want to ever tell him rest in peace, James Brown, child, you may as well say rest in pieces, honey, because they claim that James' legs been chopped off and everything. It's just a really sad situation, and I'm not exactly sure why they chopped his doggone legs off. I think it was because they were still doing DNA or studies or something like that. But like, so they've been like chopping off pieces of him. You know, it's really, really bad what has been happening with James Brown. And you know, I'm not here to judge the family. I don't know what they got going on, but I do feel kind of bad that he has not been able really thus far to really be buried like he wants to be. But anyways, We are finally at the end of the old Hollywood scandalous tale of Mr. James Brown. Please like and subscribe and share. And I love you guys so much. And I will be back with another video very soon. Bye, guys.